Sergeant Reeves was just a supply NCO, her commanding officer said in court, his voice dripping with condescension. How could she possibly perform sniper operations under fire? The gallery laughed. The prosecutor smiled. The judge nodded. No one knew that behind those supply crates, from 800 meters away, she was the one protecting the rescue team. Until a general from the Pentagon walked into that courtroom. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories of hidden heroes who served in silence, consider subscribing for more incredible accounts every week. The military courtroom at Camp Lejeune was packed beyond capacity. Morning light filtered through high windows as journalists and military officers filled every available seat. Staff Sergeant Kira Reeves sat at the defense table in dress blues, hands folded despite the handcuffs that had been removed minutes earlier. 3 months in confinement had left her uniform slightly loose, dark circles shadowing her eyes. But her posture remained military perfect. Major Reynolds, the prosecutor, stood surrounded by his JAG team, arranging documents with theatrical precision. They had the confidence of people who believed they'd already won. All rise, the bailiff announced. This court-martial is now in session, Colonel Patricia Hammond presiding. Colonel Hammond entered with 30 years of authority in her bearing. Be seated. This is a military proceeding, not a media circus. I will tolerate no disruptions. Major Reynolds, your opening statement. Reynolds moved to center floor smoothly. Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution will prove that Staff Sergeant Kira Reeves falsified weapons records, possessed unauthorized military equipment, abandoned her post during combat operations in Mogadishu, and through her negligence, caused the deaths of 2 Marines. The gallery erupted in whispers. Reynolds continued, the evidence shows Sergeant Reeves requisitioned sniper rifles, night vision equipment, and specialized ammunition far exceeding her supply unit's needs. When questioned, she provided false documentation and obstructed investigation. In the back row, a man in civilian clothes watched intently, his high-clearance security badge visible when he shifted position. Captain Marcus Chen, Kira's defense attorney, rose with barely masked frustration. Your Honor, my client's service record demonstrates excellence under combat conditions. What the prosecution calls discrepancies are classified requisitions. Objection, Reynolds interrupted. The Pentagon has confirmed no classified operations involving Sergeant Reeves exist. Sustained, Hammond replied. Captain Chen, this court has reviewed all materials. The Department of Defense confirms no records support your client's claimed activities. Chen tried to pivot, but the damage was done. Kira's hands tightened into fists under the table, knuckles white, the only sign of the storm inside. The first witness was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vance, Kira's former commanding officer. At 48, his uniform displayed 2 decades of logistics experience. Colonel Vance, Reynolds began, described Sergeant Reeves's duties in Mogadishu. She managed supply distribution for forward operating bases. Food, water, ammunition, basic supplies. Standard logistics work. Did her duties include combat operations or weapons employment? Absolutely not. She was support personnel, not a combat operator. Yet weapons accountability records show significant discrepancies during her deployment. Can you explain? Vance's expression hardened. Sergeant Reeves had access to inventory systems. Over 6 months, multiple weapons disappeared from our manifests. When I initiated investigation, she became defensive and uncooperative. What happened on October 3, 1993, during the Battle of Mogadishu? We were supporting the Ranger operation downtown. Sergeant Reeves was assigned to maintain our logistics base. Instead, she abandoned her post. 2 Marines, Corporal Martinez and Lance Corporal Chen, were killed securing equipment she should have been protecting. Kira's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. When Chen cross-examined, his frustration showed. Colonel Vance, where exactly were you positioned during the battle? At the logistics compound, coordinating support. So you personally witnessed Sergeant Reeves abandon her post? I received reports from. Reports from whom? Did you see her leave? Vance hesitated. The situation was chaotic. I was coordinating multiple operations. So you didn't actually see what Sergeant Reeves was doing during the battle? The evidence speaks for itself. 2 Marines died because equipment wasn't secured. Or, Chin suggested, perhaps there were other reasons for their deaths you're not aware of? Objection, speculation, Reynolds interjected. Sustained. During recess, Chen confronted Kira in a conference room. You need to help me here. Every witness they call makes this worse. I know, Kira replied quietly. Then talk to me. What really happened in Mogadishu? Where were you during the battle? Kira met his eyes steadily. Exactly where I was supposed to be. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. The second day brought more damaging testimony. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Blake, Weapons Accountability Officer, testified about the missing equipment. M40A1 sniper rifles, night vision optics, specialized ammunition, all disappeared under Sergeant Reeves's watch. When confronted, she couldn't explain the discrepancies. Sergeant First Class David Morrison, who served in Kira's unit, painted her as secretive and difficult to work with. She'd disappear for hours, sometimes days. When she returned, she'd be exhausted, dirty, but refused to explain where she'd been. The most devastating testimony came from Captain Richard Shaw, an intelligence officer. I reviewed Sergeant Reeves's claims of participating in combat operations. There's no evidence she ever engaged the enemy. No after-action reports mention her presence. No unit commanders confirm her involvement. In your professional opinion, Reynolds asked, is it possible Sergeant Reeves performed the operations she claims? Shaw's answer was definitive. Impossible. Combat operations require coordination, communication, documentation. None exists for her alleged activities. That evening, alone in her cell, Kira stared at the ceiling. She thought about Mogadishu, about the weight of the M40A1 in her hands, about ranging wind and distance while explosions echoed through streets below. She thought about the faces in her scope, the steady squeeze of the trigger, the burden of taking lives to save lives. On the third day, the prosecution called its surprise witness. Master Sergeant Cole Armstrong, a scout sniper with decorated service, took the stand with obvious confidence. Master Sergeant Armstrong, Reynolds began, you were in Mogadishu during the October 3rd battle. Did you encounter Sergeant Reeves during combat operations? I did not, Armstrong stated firmly. I was operating as part of the Overwatch element for the Ranger extraction. Every sniper position was accounted for. Sergeant Reeves was not among them. In your expert opinion, could she have performed the operations she's claimed? No, sir. Combat sniping requires years of training, hundreds of hours of range time, and extensive field experience. Logistics NCOs don't receive that training. When Chen began cross-examination, Kira leaned forward slightly, the first sign of real interest she'd shown. Chen studied his notes, then looked up. Master Sergeant Armstrong, you mentioned being part of the Overwatch element. What was your exact position? On a rooftop overlooking the target area. Which rooftop specifically? Armstrong provided coordinates without hesitation. And you had visual on all sniper positions? That was my job, sir. Chen consulted a document Kira had passed him. Master Sergeant, you're wearing the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal. When were you awarded that? June 1993, for service in Bosnia. Interesting. Chen approached with a printout. Because this award citation shows it was for service in Somalia, not Bosnia. And it was issued in November 1993, after the Battle of Mogadishu. Armstrong's confidence flickered. There must be some administrative confusion with the dates. Or confusion about where you actually were in October 1993. Chen pressed. Because if you were in Bosnia in June and this citation is from November for Somalia operations, you couldn't have been in Mogadishu during the October battle. Objection, Reynolds rose quickly. Relevance? Your Honor, Chen countered, the prosecution's witness is testifying about positions and activities in Mogadishu. If he wasn't actually there, his testimony is worthless. Hammond studied Armstrong with new scrutiny. Master Sergeant, were you in Mogadishu on October 3, 1993? Armstrong's face reddened. My service record speaks for itself. That's not an answer. Were you or were you not in Somalia during the Battle of Mogadishu? After a long pause, Armstrong replied quietly, I arrived in Mogadishu 6 days after the battle. The courtroom exploded. Hammond's gavel cracked repeatedly. Order. Explain yourself, Master Sergeant. I was briefed extensively on the operation, Armstrong said defensively. I have complete knowledge of. Second-hand knowledge, Chen interrupted. You're testifying as an eyewitness to events you didn't witness. Your Honor, I move to strike this witness's entire testimony. Granted, Hammond said coldly, glaring at Reynolds. Major, did you verify this witness's presence in theater before calling him? Reynolds looked shaken. We relied on his service record, Your Honor. Clearly a mistake. This court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. That night, word spread through military channels that the prosecution's case was crumbling. But Kira remained in custody, knowing the biggest revelation was yet to come. The next morning, tension filled the courtroom. Reynolds looked less confident, but prepared to salvage his case with closing arguments. Chen whispered last-minute strategy to Kira, who remained impassive. Before proceedings could begin, the bailiff received a message. He approached Hammond, spoke quietly. Her eyes widened slightly before she nodded. The court will come to order, Hammond announced, though court hadn't officially started. We have an unusual situation. General James Carver, Joint Special Operations Command, has requested immediate permission to address this court. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Before Reynolds could object, the courtroom doors opened. General Carver entered in full dress uniform, for stars gleaming on his shoulders. His presence commanded immediate silence. Behind him, 2 officers carried sealed document cases. Kira stood instantly to attention. For the first time since the trial began, emotion flickered across her face, quickly suppressed. Hammond rose automatically. General Carver, this is highly irregular. I apologize for the intrusion, Colonel, Carver said, his voice carrying command authority. But this trial has proceeded on false premises. I'm authorized by the Secretary of Defense to present classified information relevant to these proceedings. Reynolds stood. Your Honor, the prosecution objects. This appears to be. Sit down, Major, Carver said quietly. The command in his voice was unmistakable. Reynolds sat. Carver approached Kira directly. In front of the entire courtroom, he rendered a crisp salute. Kira returned it, her movements precise despite visible emotion. Staff Sergeant Reeves, Carver said formally, the President of the United States sends his regards and regrets that Operation Gothic Serpent's full details remained classified this long. He turned to Hammond. Colonel, I have an executive order signed by the President authorizing partial declassification of Staff Sergeant Reeves's service record. He handed a folder to the bailiff. Hammond opened it, her expression transforming from skeptical to shocked as she read. General Carver, she said carefully, these proceedings are suspended. I need clarification on what exactly I'm reading. What you're reading, Colonel, is the truth. Staff Sergeant Reeves wasn't just a supply NCO. She was a cover identity for a joint DoD-CIA program placing advanced operators in non-combat roles for deep cover operations. The courtroom erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Officers conferring urgently. Hammond's gavel cracked repeatedly. Order. This courtroom will maintain order or I'll clear it entirely. When silence returned, Carver continued. Staff Sergeant Reeves is a qualified Marine Scout sniper with 8 years of covert service. During the Battle of Mogadishu, while ostensibly managing supply operations, she actually provided overwatch protection for multiple rescue elements. He approached the judge's bench with another document. This is her confirmed kill record from October 3, 1993. 89 confirmed eliminations over 16 hours of continuous combat. The number hung in the air. 89. Every target she eliminated was actively engaging U.S. forces. Every shot protected American lives. The 2 Marines who died, Corporal Martinez and Lance Corporal Chen, weren't killed because of negligence. They died in an ambush that Sergeant Reeves couldn't prevent from her position 800 meters away. But she did kill the 6 insurgents who attacked them, preventing total loss of that element. Carver's voice hardened. The missing weapons from supply records. Specialized equipment for her actual mission. The abandoned post allegation. She was in an overwatch position doing exactly what she was trained to do. The falsified records. Covered documentation for a classified program. He turned to face Colonel Vance, who had gone pale. Some officers in this courtroom failed to recognize what was happening in their own units. That's a training failure, not a crime. But attempting to destroy a decorated operator's career because of that ignorance? That borders on criminal negligence. Reynolds stood shakily. General, with respect, why wasn't this information provided when charges were filed? Because, Major, this program involves assets still in place worldwide. Exposing it prematurely puts lives at risk. We hoped local JAG would see through the circumstantial nature of your case. Instead, you rushed to trial with a witness who lied about even being in theater. Carver's disgust was evident. He handed another file to Hammond. This contains testimony from 5 officers who directly witnessed Sergeant Reeves's actions in Mogadishu. All have now been authorized to speak. One is a Medal of Honor recipient who credits her with saving his life. Hammond reviewed the documents, her jaw tight. General Carver, I need to confer with the convening authority about how to proceed. Of course, Colonel. But I should inform you that the Secretary of Defense has already issued orders transferring Sergeant Reeves to Fort Bragg for her next assignment. Chen finally found his voice. Your Honor, I move for immediate dismissal of all charges. Motion granted, Hammond said without hesitation. All charges against Staff Sergeant Kira Reeves are dismissed with prejudice. Sergeant Reeves, you are released from custody immediately. This court apologizes for the injustice you've suffered. As Kira stood, removing the weight of 3 months of false accusation, the courtroom transformed. Several Marines in the gallery came to attention, rendering salutes. Then more joined. Within moments, every service member in the room stood at attention, saluting one of their own who had served in silence and suffered in silence. Kira returned the salutes, her composure finally cracking as tears welled in her eyes. Carver approached her privately as the courtroom emptied. We should have intervened sooner. You shouldn't have endured 3 months of this. I understood operational security requirements, sir, Kira replied. Still. No operator should face this alone. He handed her a folder. Your next assignment. We're standing up a new program. I want you training the next generation. Sir, I'm still effective in field operations. You are. But you're more valuable sharing what you know. The program needs instructors who have actually done the work. He smiled slightly. Besides, you've earned some time away from being shot at. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded them. Questions flew from every direction. Carver raised a hand. I'll make one statement. Staff Sergeant Kira Reeves is a decorated combat veteran whose service record speaks for itself. The charges against her were based on incomplete information and have been dismissed. Due to ongoing classified operations, no further details will be provided. Thank you. As they moved toward a waiting vehicle, Kira noticed Colonel Vance standing apart from the crowd, looking shaken. Their eyes met briefly. She saw recognition there, and something like shame. Chen caught up with her at the vehicle. "Sergeant Reeves, I owe you an apology. I should have trusted you more. You did your job, Captain. Can't ask for more than that. Still. If you ever need anything, call me." He handed her his card. Kira smiled slightly. "I'll remember that." 6 months later, at a classified training facility, Kira stood before a class of 20 candidates, men and women selected for the Covert Operator program. Her instructor uniform bore new ribbons, awards that had been classified until recently. "My name is Gunnery Sergeant Reeves," she began. "For 8 years, I operated under non-combat cover identities in hostile territories. You're here because you've been selected for similar work." She paced before them. "This program requires sacrifice. You'll serve without recognition. Your greatest achievements will never be acknowledged. You'll endure isolation, suspicion, and in some cases, false accusation. Anyone uncomfortable with that should leave now." No one moved. "Good. Because the work matters more than recognition. Every target you eliminate, every intelligence package you deliver, every operation you support saves lives. American lives. Allied lives. Civilian lives. That's why we do this." She pulled up a tactical photo on the screen. Mogadishu, October 3, 1993. "I'll walk you through the Overwatch positions I maintained over 16 hours of continuous combat. You'll learn from my mistakes and my successes. But most importantly, you'll learn why operational security matters more than your ego." One candidate raised a hand. "Gunny, is it true you faced court-martial for your actions?" "Yes. Because I maintained operational security even when it meant facing false charges. Some of you will face similar situations. Your ability to withstand pressure, to trust the system will eventually correct itself, that's as important as your ability to put rounds on target." "How did you handle it?" another asked. "Knowing you were right but unable to defend yourself." Kira was quiet for a moment. "By remembering the mission. The 16-hour firefight, the lives I protected, the threats I eliminated. That mattered more than my reputation. Your mission will always matter more than your comfort." She clicked to the next slide. "Now, let's discuss long-range wind reading in urban terrain. Everything I'm about to teach you is from practical experience." 2 years later, Kira stood in a small Pentagon ceremony room. General Carver pinned a silver star on her uniform, the citation reading, "Extraordinary Heroism in Ground Combat Against Hostile Forces." The ceremony was attended by fewer than 20 people, all with appropriate clearances. "This recognition is long overdue," Carver said. "But late recognition is better than no recognition." Kira accepted with her characteristic composure. "Thank you, sir." But the real recognition was continuing the mission after Mogadishu. That's what mattered. After the ceremony, a young woman in marine dress blues approached hesitantly. "Gunnery Sergeant Reeves. I'm Second Lieutenant Sarah Martinez." Kira studied her. "Martinez. Related to Corporal James Martinez?" "He was my brother." Sarah's eyes were bright. "I wanted to thank you. My family was told for years that he died because of equipment failures and negligence. Learning the truth, that he died fighting alongside someone like you, that meant everything to us." Kira felt emotion rise in her throat. "Your brother was brave. He held his position when others would have run. I wish I could have done more. You did everything possible. And you've honored his memory by training others to do the same work." Sarah straightened. "I've applied for the program you teach. I want to serve the way you did, the way my brother did." Kira extended her hand. "Then I'll see you at selection, Lieutenant." That night, alone in her quarters, Kira reviewed after-action reports from her former students. 3 were currently deployed in deep cover positions. Their operations were saving lives, just as hers had. The mission continued. She thought about the courtroom, the false accusations, the 3 months of isolation and doubt. Then she thought about the 89 targets she'd eliminated in Mogadishu, the countless operations before and since, the students she was training to continue the work. The cost of serving in silence had been high. But the value of that service was incalculable. If this story moved you, if you believe some heroes serve in silence and deserve recognition even when their work must remain classified, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this, more quiet professionals who changed history while remaining invisible. Share this with someone who understands that service doesn't always come with medals or recognition. That sometimes the most important work happens in shadows, carried out by people who will never receive public praise. This is the story of Gunnery Sergeant Kira Reeves. Supply Sergeant. Sniper. Silent Professional. Disclaimer: this video is a fictional narrative created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual persons, events, or organizations is purely coincidental.